In The Marsh King's Daughter, Daisy Ridley continues to prove she'll have a career beyond Star Wars as she plays the daughter of a kidnapper and murderer. To summarize the film, Jacob kidnapped Beth, and for 12 years she was held captive in the wilderness of Michigan. While she was held captive, in the second year he got her pregnant and she gave birth to a daughter named Helena. Over the 10 years that Helena, Jacob, and Beth were out in the wilderness together, Helena knew nothing about who her father really was. All she saw him was her father. Someone who taught her to hunt, forage, and because Jacob was really into indigenous cultures, he even not branded her, that's a terrible way to say it, but he gave her tattoos, gave her little scarification stuff, and really he just made it so that their bond was very much intense, but could still be seen as loving when it comes to Helena. That is until Beth finally finds a way to both escape with her daughter, and with that, Helena has to deal with the bubble being burst that her father is a murderer, a kidnapper, and even 20 years after her and her mother got freedom, she's still wrestling with who her father was and who she saw him as. Which makes things very complicated when her father gets out of jail and is now he's not free because he broke out, but he's out there and he's showing signs that he's around. And with that, Helena, who still very much knows how to use a knife, a gun, and everything, she has to reconcile the man that he is, the man that she saw him as, and the man that he could be in terms of whether or not he is a threat to her family or whether or not he's just a sad old man who so badly wanted a family that he would go to extremes for it. So the highlight for me to start off is just feeling like we're getting different sides of Daisy Ridley when it comes to her latest films. And granted, I want to give credit because Star Wars was in 2019, and since then she hasn't necessarily had a hit. So it does feel like every movie she does is partly about diversifying her filmography, yet also taking on risk. And sometimes the risk, like in terms of sometimes I think about dying, aren't necessarily the risks that everybody would take. But I do feel like sometimes I think about dying is on the extreme, and the Marsh King's Daughter is somewhere in the middle in terms of her trying to show that she's more than just Rey from Star Wars. And the reason I say that is because there's a multi-layered kind of character here. She's a mother, someone's daughter. They play on her being a wife a little bit, but you also have to take note of everything that she knows and is trying to deal with in terms of, what's the best way to put it? So when it comes to Helena, she has a very complicated relationship with her parents. Her father because of who he is, and then her mother because, Helena was born of rape. So this feeling that her mother hated her, didn't like her, felt obligated to protect her because that's her child, but at the same time, because of her origins, you see what I'm getting at? And because because Helena has to figure all this out, it's taxing on her, and it made her kind of hate her mother in a way. And then while hating her mother, she's trying to be a good mother to her daughter, and even in some ways pass down some of the good things her father taught her, while keeping who her parents are completely hidden, to the point her husband doesn't know, her child doesn't know, nobody but her, and also her stepdad knows. And you can see all of this secrets, all of this, rearranging history into a way that she can accept. It's taxing on her and it's kind of draining. And yet then you see her have this face-off with her dad, which is a highlight of itself. And while she doesn't necessarily have freedom and can breathe easy afterwards, at the same time, you can recognize that there's something about not denying who her father was, or even denying how there are parts of him in her that allowed her some type of release. And just watching Ridley play that out is very interesting. And just to go deep into the whole Helena complicated relationship with her father and mother, as we said, Helena's not stupid, and after a certain point, when she realized who her father was, what happened, so comes trying to deal with the fact that your mother has got to be married and she didn't have other children, but clearly you are somebody from her past life that, because you're her kid, she can't get rid of. You're a reminder of what happened because of the rape, the worst that happened. And who knows how many times maybe Beth might have been assaulted again and again, maybe gave herself miscarriages and a whole bunch of stuff that's not mentioned in the movie, but who knows, could be mentioned in the book. All I'm trying to say is there's a sudden weirdness of guilt involved with Helena and Beth's relationship in terms of recognizing how she came to be, yet at the same time it's her mother, so she wants to love her, she wants to be there, but it seems throughout 20 years from when Helena and Beth left the wilderness to now being a part of civilization, it seems Helena just saw all the negatives of her mom, and what is it, depression, the quiet moments, and anytime it came with anything like the love, the reading bedtime stories and all that, it seemingly has been blanked out because the negative is so heavy. So that's very interesting to watch. And I would say when it came to Brooklynn Prince, I believe her name is, who played the younger version, she definitely got to really push that along, and then Daisy Ridley just took the baton and kept going. And then we talk about Jacob. Again, Jacob is one of those characters who, if he was giving a bit more depth, it would be very challenging to damn him. But because he murdered somebody, because of the kidnapping, it's like you can't really try to complicate what easily can be a monster. Yet at the same time, what doesn't help is that they don't tell us why he did all this. They don't give us anything about his background. All we really know is that he's really into indigenous cultures, hence the scarification and tattooing. But even with that said, you and I can see a monster because we see him kill somebody, we know that he kidnapped Beth, yet it's very clear between Ridley's performance and Prince's performance that this is still somebody's father. Somebody's father who was loving, kind, and yes, maybe a little hard on them at times, but that's because he was trying to teach them lessons about survival. And at the same time, Helena didn't see or experience this terrible person until she got older. And when she did get told or experience a person, it was always through third parties. Her father was never cruel to her. Her father never beat her or anything like that. Instead, she hears that from other people, hears it from her mom, and trying to reconcile that is imaginably difficult. So it's not really until the end, which we'll get into in a second when they have to face off, that she really sees her father as the person that people have been talking about for years. And going into that, I want to be very clear. The infight between Helena and Jacob is not one of those fights where it's like something you see from Sylvester Stallone or Arnold Schwarzenegger, where it's this huge epic final battle. I would say it's more so about tactics, and it even reminds me a little bit of some of the boss battles in Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, in terms of if you go in guns blazing trying to shoot and everything, clearly you're not going to make it, but if you try to be tactical, make sure you have good coverage, and really take advantage of your opponent maybe not being not agile, but being smart about who they're going against, that's when you can get tripped up. Because clearly, Jacob has a lot of experience, and if he can survive out in the wilderness for 12 years, break out of a van and be pursued dead and everything, he can probably handle his daughter. But at the same time, Jacob is also older now, so certain things he can get easily injured by. And at the same time, it's not like Helena just stopped once her father was no longer part of her life. She seemingly kept up practice, and with that, it's kind of this grasshopper versus sensei type of situation, even though it's not really the best analogy, but you get what I'm saying, right? It's this very complicated fight where the one who's trained, the one who's soaked up all the knowledge, has to go against their teacher, who's also their father, who, yes, is a very dangerous and person with a terrible reputation, deservedly so, yet at the same time, that's someone you love, that's someone who you honored at one time, and yet now you're in a position where you know only one of you could potentially survive, and you have to set aside all those feelings in order to make sure you're the one that walks away in the end. So as for how this movie ended, what happened was Jacob is able to break out of the prison man is transporting him. He fakes his death by putting his gold or silver teeth on somebody who he was traveling with, and then having the vehicle destroyed and burned. And the original idea seemed to be he was going to make it out to the wilderness, and with that, he probably wouldn't be found ever again. However, before he wanted to go out into the wilderness, he wanted to reunite his family that was left. Beth at this point is dead. She, I think, committed suicide 1 or 2 years before Daisy Ridley's character is introduced. So all he has left is Helena and now his granddaughter. And he decides he's going to make visits to the house. Not make himself known or announced, just leave little things to make it clear that I've been here. Helena doesn't appreciate that because she knows her father's story at this point. But just to make sure she's not paranoid because she was told that he died, she does what she's been taught to do in order to trick, trap, or at least be able to know something or someone was around. And with having all the signs that her father's been around, she decides to go out to that cabin that she grew up in, and that's where her dad decides to greet her. And originally it seems that things were going to end peacefully with just him being told, I don't want you in my life like that, and then maybe him accepting it. However, when her stepdad, the cop that arrested Jacob, comes around, Jacob feels like he's been betrayed, so he shoots the cop dead, puts Beth into this hole that seemingly has been there for quite some time. Might have been where he put Beth any time she was being punished. And I think even he put Helena in there once or twice. Anyway, getting to the point. He puts adult Helena into the hole because he's going to go get his granddaughter, bring her back. Helena, luckily, because of strength and also knowing how to get out of the hole because she was trained, is able to get out the hole, get her dad's old gun from 20 years ago, which thankfully still works and even has bullets available, and she goes to hunt him down. Now, when he's in the canoe going down river, she's able to get him, but not able to kill him. So unfortunately, their journey ends up in the marsh where he gets to jump on her. But as they're going across a cliff, she tricks him, brings him down the cliff with her, and he gets injured, she gets injured, and they both have one gun each. She has her stepfather's gun, he has his gun that he carries around, and luckily for her, she's able to get her gun first and is able to shoot her dad right in the forehead, killing him instantly, thus allowing her to return back to civilization. And while it isn't necessarily made clear what the police said or the media said after all this, at the very least, we're pushed to think that Helena now is allowed, or rather able to have a normal life since she now has a full 360 view of her father beyond what people have been saying about him for her entire life. She knows both the man who taught her so much that allowed her to survive, yet also knows the man who pushed her to use these survival skills because otherwise she would have been killed.